toko maru te waka, ko mohaka tino te awa, kei puaha e tau ana e. Ma te koutou i te aroha, titiro ki taranaki, hei purei ko hu, ko mātou kei raro e. Oi, ko Ngāti Mutu Ngāti Iwi, ko me Ngāti Kahununu ki Wairoa, ngā hapu, ngā iwi. Well, I'm quite nervous, excuse me. Oh, heaven forbid. Anyway, ko Ngaropi ahau. So, kei te mihi tēnei kia koutou, te haukainga. Kia koe hoki BJ me te mineta marama. Kia koutou ngā pai maunga e haere mai nei ki te noho, ki te whakawhiti kōrero, tēnā koutou katoa. I will do my best to distract you with appealing images of our pride and joy. Okay, you know, participants, my part, well, there's lots of parts within the research, but a couple of areas that I was looking at was in relation to atua, karakia, but also miru, and they interconnect. So participants were asked what part do they think that atua play in teaching us about violence? And this question couldn't be separated from the previous questions, which was about pūrākau, that participants might draw from, to use within their daily life and within the mahi that they do. Any of those pūrākau that could cast light on our relationships with atua. And although there were no direct questions asked about karakia, karakia could not be ignored within both those questions because they were all interconnected. So there are three areas that I wish to just briefly comment on in respect to atua. The first is around intellectual tradition and consequences, and there are a couple of headings that come under that. The unbalanced portrayal of atua and consequences, and also using atua within the mahi in ngā kari aroto. So although my kōrero today is mainly focused around atua, it embraced karakia, pūrākau and whakatauki, forming a type of trilogy cycle which admits humans by requiring us to communicate within our communities, to enact wānanga, karakia and ritual to support knowledge retention through the ability to commune, to emphasise and be of one mind with each other in te taiao, so that we can take a respectful place and position in te taiao, which would and does in turn reciprocate by supporting our well-being. Sorry, I'm just trying to keep track of where I am. That atua are a foundation of creation and intellectual tradition, and a value-based system that uncover a way of perceiving and understanding the world and daily life in its wholeness, not in fragmented sections to tell a story or to entertain children or amuse children. And I'd like you to hold that thought. So the pūrākau about atua demonstrate that atua are strategic, powerful and thought-provoking entrepreneurial representations of powerful and political cultural icons that can stimulate us to explore further using our tikanga and our reo. Okay. I sort of just feel like I'm saying things that people know, but you know, there was a theme all the way through that research. So other cultures, people are saying that other cultures have, they have theirs. We accommodate them, but these are ours. We want them. We want them. And we want them respected the same way we respect others. So there's a vast collection, all participants considered that there was a vast collection of astute and relevant information that is readily available. It's readily available, okay, and can be utilised to enhance well-being. And that there are multiple examples to draw from which offer inspiration, wisdom and knowledge, which persist and continue to resonate. It continues to resonate with us today. And prevailing themes throughout was the abundance of intelligence contained within pūrākau, providing insight into human behaviour and conflict resolution. So that was a long quote, and here's the other part, that the first quote and then this quote are two contrasting, interconnected, interdependent kōrero in relation to rongo and rongoā. Okay? So these are providing insight into our behaviour and how we can start managing conflict resolution. So, it's acknowledging that we are, and we all know this, if you work in this field, we all know this, everyone is capable of violence, we are all capable of violence, but we are also capable of healing. And we have choices, and we make choices. Okay, so in respect to rongo and rongoā, there's some healthy choices. So alongside that collection of astute, intel really, alongside this was the understanding about the origins of tikanga and our intimate relationship with te taiao, which suggests processes and procedures on how to conduct ourselves. They also pointed out both the consequences as well as the reciprocal nature of the relationship. Now, so that reciprocal relationship does require us to be aware of our position in the environment, whatever environment we might find ourselves in. We go into an organisation, we go into a police station, we go into a home, that is an environment, okay? So being aware, not just of our external, outside environment, can only enhance daily life. And basically we think, well, kia matara. Kia matara. We have obligations to honour in that relationship, and we need to be mindful about it. So one of the questions that were asked was, so what is actually happening? What is happening with us as kaimahi and with people that we have interaction with, that this seems to be a forgotten part of our relationships, the consequences and the obligations and the honouring of those relationships. So it's just not on the radar in some places. And and you heard Marama this morning, I'm not just talking about us as whānau members or as kaimahi. It's not on the radar in relation to a lot of government personnel that we deal with. So alongside tikanga and consequences and obligations, there were other aspects involved. So it's not just about atua, it wasn't just about atua or their perceived realm, because there are realms within as well. There are cultural constructs involved, such as utu, koha, tuakana taina relationships and their roles within the social fabric of daily life, and the responsibilities that occur and need to be recognised, understood and accommodated so that whānau members and kaimahi are safe and can be positioned to exercise our strengths, everybody's strengths. And I think that's, I really like that little quote about, really saying, well, stop coasting along on everybody else's energy. You may be the potiki, you may be the tainer, however, you've got talents, use them, step up. So this is an image of, actually this is my Uncle Tiki, we'll come back to him later, and those are his great-grandnephews. There's 5 of them. So shown within the concepts of pūrākau and atua are the interconnections and interdependency, because atua don't exist in isolation to each other, nor do humans live in isolation from them. The concepts are strategic, they are multi-layered, and need to be viewed within a wider context about human behaviour, because our origins are interconnected and can still teach us how to be and how to live well. And those interconnections and interdependencies, I think, promote being Māori and being proudly Māori. And being proudly Māori is to thrive. So the disruption to the transmission of knowledge was also commented on throughout the research, and the disturbance to the intellectual tradition and to the repositories of collective hapu knowledge, and how the practice and the application of that knowledge was retained, and then how it was passed on. And, I think this quote is pointing out how knowledge has been dropped. One of the things it's pointing out a lot of things, has been dropped. It's pointing out, one of the things it's pointing out is how knowledge has been dropped into the fairy tale nonsense basket. Okay? And the image before of Uncle Tiki and his great-grandnephews, one of the things he used to say is that if people don't have their myths and legends, then they have nothing. Okay? They really have ceased to exist as a people. So I ask you to hold that thought as well. Okay. So I want to talk about being unbalanced. So atua are often portrayed as being unbalanced, with an overemphasis on acting violently, almost exclusively male, vengeful, and selfish. When they are representations about successfully living within the vast boundaries and seasons of the natural world, and being balanced about how we conduct ourselves within it. And there are multiple variations in how we violate te tai ao. Well, that's violence, okay? There are multiple examples of how we violate te tai ao, and it also reflects on the choices we make when we behave in a violent manner. So, concern about the colonial male gendering of atua and the removal, minimising and rendering invisible atua wahine from the pantheon of possibilities in respect to atua was voiced throughout the research, was voiced by nearly everybody, male and female participants. Now, we all know that this created imbalance about how violence toward wahine Māori was, and in some cases continues to be viewed. So this unbalanced approach has an undermining effect on cultural identity and mana wahine, because we all know context is important, okay? Which includes who is telling the pūrākau, who originally documented it, as well as what and whose cultural lens is being applied. So, and I suppose at some point this is something that we should explore a little further with our minister. So the continued appropriation and distortion of our pūrākau not only constitutes another muru plunder, and I would assert that along with other colonising factors, it has enabled violence in our wider communities to occur and to continue to occur. I'm going to go back. Within the strategy, if this question hasn't occurred, he ha te take e ka ngaro atu ngā kōrero a ngā atua wahine. Within that strategy, then actually we need to be having another conversation as well. Okay? So I'm just finding out where I am. So who really benefits? Who really benefits from that continued denial, ignoring and undermining of atua wahine? And we have to ask ourselves that question. I think we have to be more direct about saying who really benefits and what those benefits are. Because there are benefits from domination. Okay? And clearly what we can also see is that who conveys the kōrero makes a difference. And we heard the Minister and BJ talking about it this morning. Kanohi ki te kanohi, mana ki te mana, wairua ki te wairua. The conveyor of the message makes a difference. And it's a powerful difference. I really like this one, this image. The images are all there because I like them. Okay, so just within, talking about ngā kariaroto, and there's been a couple of, I think mine are the only, they're sort of quite small projects in relation to ngā kariaroto, but I think there needs to be some wider coming together of us in relation to that. So ngā kariaroto and using atua within mahi, it needs cultural experience and familiarity with atua because it requires a planned, strategic approach to dispel the illusion that violence within whānau Māori is normal. It is not. It never has been. And that kōrero is in those pūrākau. Violence within whānau Māori is not normal. We've had a 200-year apparition. It's a long apparition. So the requirement is to renormalise tikanga knowledge and application, accommodating reflection for human potential to grow, because it is much more than dealing with the wicked problem. And that's what it's called. In the reports, and it's referred to as the wicked problem. Okay. Atua and human behaviour. There has been a disconnection to the experience about emotional language and understanding the range and scope of feelings. Understanding that scope and range needs to be redirected and reconnected in a tikanga manner. So, and we've heard others say to our mind, we have a deep oncology of emotional expression embedded into our Māori, which is not present in the Pākehā world, and it's not present in their vocabulary. And I'll give you just one example, and if my teenage mokopuna can understand it, the rest of us can, the rest of the world should. And they said, what's the example? Well, haka. And asked my mokopuna, when you do the haka with your rugby teams, because I've seen them do the haka, well, everyone's seen te ihi, eh? Me te wihi, the kaha and their sense of pride. So what do your Pākehā mates call it? They call it a war dance. A haka. Haka is not a dance. That's just one example. We have got thousands within our emotional understanding and vocabulary that is not present in Te Ao Pākehā. So we need to wake up. We've been dumbed down, incredibly dumbed down. So fully understanding about ngā ko Māori and ngā kariaroto to come from a Te Ao Māori base, a whakapapa base, a history base to more fully comprehend and understand ngā karea roto. You know, that knowledge, we all know it, we have to become more organised about how we say it and how we lay it out. That knowledge won't come from the patchwork education system we continue to be exposed to, that our children continue to be exposed to, and God forbid it's happening to our mokopuna and our mokopuna tuarua. We have to become more organised about what we are doing and what we are saying and how and when we say it. And we should we should expect change. The intellectual infrastructure of our communities needs to be smartened up. We can do it. You know, the teaching, it's a patchwork education system. They don't know what they're doing in relation to us. They never have. You know, for many teachers who don't understand the scope offered within pūrākau or how to apply tikanga as a daily living practice. And I'm not just talking about Pākehā teachers here. We've had some exposure to kura kaupapa Māori teachers who are not living that kaupapa in relation to our children. And it's shameful. It's disturbing. It's extremely disturbing. So I'll just briefly comment on one of the other areas that was looked at as well. So I talked about muru, the plunder of our people, and I was looking at that in relation to a tangible, you know. So I was thinking muru in the wider scheme of a colonised society, you know, where there's nothing left of value to be plundered. The whenua has been taken and all the resources which generate health and wealth in people's lives has been taken. What do we have left that is of value? And through that, kōrero was what is left of value to the oppressed is our children. And through that, within that, those that findings was a report, and it comes from the League, and Prue's here somewhere. If it's not, I hope she will correct me. A report called He Murunga Tamariki Ki Kāinga Tauhou. That's a removal of our children being put into different families, Pākehā families, and they're being paid to look after them. And poverty, we've been plunged into poverty. And what we've got left is our children, and they've been taking them, and they continue to take them. And there's not much restructuring happening in, you know where. I'm not going to say their name. I'm not saying their name. So that's tangible. And then I thought, you know, we've got nothing left of value to plunder except our children. And I said, hang on a minute. There's the intangible. And this is what came through within the research about atua as well, and karakia, that there is something else that we've got to plunder. And it's intangible, you know. That's our atua and our pūrākau. And they're going to be, and they are being plundered, and it's going to increase for commercial gain and commodification for mass consumption. You know, therefore, the pūrākau about our atua and pūrākau, they need to be infantised and trivialised. There's a deep need to do that for easy consumption. And there are more children in this country than there are adults, and they're a market. So watch that space. We know that our atua are not flippant stories. They position us. They centralise us. They position us with messages about, you know, how to flourish, how to grow, about what not to do, how to strategise. And they contain multiple layers of truths. We should not trust their storytellers any longer. to muck around and put weird human faces on our trees when they're telling a story about tāne or tūmatuenga. The two everybody seems to head to without those messages really being understood about us and human behaviour. So just in conclusion, you know, I just think the journey back for us as a people, from a concerted, it's concerted, and it's ongoing. This ongoing effort to subjugate us is long. It's been long. It's not over. But the difference now is that it's steadier, and it's an incrementally progressive journey. So it's an individual, it's also a mass, and we have to make it a mass, a group journey of recognition, recovery, healing and reconciliation. And this journey should involve all of the cultural constructs, all of the cultural structures, concepts and history that we have managed to cling on to from the remnants of our culture. Remnants of our culture. We don't need to, nor should we be obliged or coerced into including the colonised, shallow, lip service, white stream renditions of any of our pūrākau, including those about atua. We are more than capable of re-establishing our own internal interconnections, our own eternal independent truths about our spiritual origins and our cultural icons. We can do this ourselves. Nō reira, tēnā koutou katoa.
Ari akana tohurai waka-aere mai ngā tikanga I tere pai kai ai te motu nei tō pikitanga kei te pure poto e ke tanga kei toro anu ki a whakarongo ko e ke te reka mai o te kōrero. Mātau tonu au ki a koe e tohu e te ngā kaua ka puke tonu me aha i ara e mā